Have you ever heard of Elijah as the prophet of fire? What else do you know about him? Most people only remember his epic confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. But what if I told you that this man's story goes far beyond that iconic scene? That his life was a roller coaster of faith, fear, power, and above all, a living testimony that God uses imperfect people to accomplish extraordinary things. That's exactly what we're going to discover today, here on The Name Behind the Letter. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will blow your mind and change the way you see the Bible. Let's start by breaking the myth that Elijah was some kind of invincible superhero. Many imagine he lived on a pedestal, untouchable, full of power. But the truth is, he was just like us, with fears, weaknesses, and moments of deep discouragement. Elijah was a mighty prophet of God during the reigns of Ahab and Ahaziah in the northern kingdom of Israel, around 873–852 BC. He shaped the history of his time and dominated Hebrew thought for centuries afterward. His prophecies emphasized unconditional loyalty to God, consistent with the calling of the nation of Israel. But here's the kicker. Elijah wasn't some polished, palace-dwelling prophet. No, he was a rugged man, wearing a garment of hair and a leather belt. His clothes and strange appearance, as described in the 2 Kings 1:8, paint a picture of someone who clearly didn't fit in with the royal crowd. And get this, he was known for his swift feet and his habit of dwelling in caves. Does that sound like someone who enjoyed the finer things in life? Hardly. This was a man who loved the outdoors, who was comfortable with the raw and untamed aspects of nature. Now picture this. Israel is in spiritual chaos. King Ahab, one of the worst kings in Israel's history, is on the throne. His wife, Jezebel. She's pure trouble. Together, they've turned the nation into a hotbed of Baal worship. The people have turned their backs on God. And then out of nowhere, Elijah appears. He doesn't come with an army, he doesn't have a fancy title. He just shows up and drops a bombshell. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Can you imagine the audacity? This wild-looking man, probably smelling of the wilderness, walks up to the king and basically says, "Hey, your fake God, he's useless. The real God is about to shut off the taps." And then, poof, Elijah vanishes. God sends him to hide by the Kerith Brook. And here's where it gets really interesting. God uses ravens to bring him food. Ravens, those birds that usually spell bad news, are now playing delivery service for God's prophet. Talk about turning expectations upside down. But the story doesn't stop there. When the brook dries up, because drought, God sends Elijah to Zarephath in Sidon. That's outside of Israel, folks. He meets a widow there who's down to her last meal. She's got a handful of flour and a little oil. That's it. And what does Elijah do? He asks her to make him a small loaf first. Now, if you're thinking, wow, that's pretty bold, you're right. But here's the thing. The woman's faith matches Elijah's audacity. She obeys, and guess what? The flour and oil never run out until the rain returns. It's miracle after miracle, showing that when we step out in faith, God shows up in big ways. Now let's talk about the main event, the one everyone knows, the showdown on Mount Carmel. This is where Elijah really earns his prophet of fire nickname. Picture the scene. 450 prophets of Baal on one side, Elijah all alone on the other. The Baal crew is going nuts, shouting, dancing, cutting themselves, trying to get their God to light their sacrifice. Hours go by, nothing happens. And Elijah, he's just chilling, throwing shade. He says, "Shout louder." Maybe he's sleeping or traveling, or perhaps he's busy relieving himself. The sarcasm is off the charts. Then it's Elijah's turn. He doesn't dance, he doesn't shout, he simply prays, and boom. Fire falls from heaven, consuming not just the sacrifice, but the wood, the stones, even the water in the trench around the altar. It's a jaw-dropping display of God's power. The people are awestruck, crying out, "The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God." It's a moment of triumph, a vindication of Elijah's faith and God's power. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. After this incredible victory, Jezebel sends Elijah a death threat. And what does our fearless prophet do? He runs. The man who stood alone against 450 false prophets is now terrified of one angry queen. He runs so far that he ends up in the desert, sitting under a broom tree asking God to take his life. "I've had enough, Lord," he says. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." It's a stark reminder that even the mightiest of God's servants can hit rock bottom. But look at how God responds. He doesn't scold Elijah or tell him to toughen up. Instead, he sends an angel to feed him and let him rest. Not once, but twice. It's a beautiful picture of God's tender care for his exhausted servant. After this, Elijah travels for 40 days and nights until he reaches Mount Horeb, the same mountain where Moses received the 10 Commandments. He hides in a cave, probably feeling sorry for himself, and that's where God shows up again. But not in the way you might expect. Not in a powerful wind that tears the mountains apart. Not in an earthquake, not even in fire. Instead, God speaks to Elijah in a gentle whisper. It's a powerful lesson. Sometimes God's voice isn't in the grand and spectacular, but in the quiet moments of our lives. Elijah's story doesn't end there. He goes on to anoint kings and prophets, including Elisha, who would take up his mantle. And his exit from this world? It's as dramatic as his life. He doesn't just die, he's taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. It's a fitting end for a man whose life burned bright with passion for God. So what can we learn from Elijah? First, that God uses imperfect people. Elijah was a man of great faith, but also of great fear. He had moments of incredible courage and moments of deep despair. And God used him through it all. Second, that God never gives up on us, even when we feel like giving up on ourselves. When Elijah was at his lowest, God was there, providing, comforting, and gently redirecting him. Elijah's story is a roller coaster of faith, fear, power, and human weakness. It reminds us that serving God isn't about being perfect. It's about being available. It's about trusting God even when everything seems to be falling apart. It's about believing that the God who can send fire from heaven is the same God who speaks in a gentle whisper. The name behind the letter is a channel created for you to dive deep into these stories and uncover the richness behind biblical characters. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss anything. And tell me in the comments, who do you want me to feature in the next episode of The Name Behind the Letter? Share this video with your friends and family so more people can discover the story of Elijah, the prophet who was so much more than fire. God bless you, and see you next time.